All right. Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me. All right. Let me. All right. Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me. All right. Now that you can hear me, let me just quickly say. All right. Let me. That I made two videos. One that was attached to the actual service, explaining that our services are recorded a week in advance. And then this morning I got up, recorded another video because the service was recorded prior to a lot of the things that were happening in our country, and specifically in our city of Atlanta. And so I wanted to make sure that the sermon and the service did not come off as tone deaf or ignoring what's going on. And so if you did not get a chance to watch the video that came before that, which was about 16 or 17 minutes, go to our page. I'll resend it out on our app. If you're not on our app, go to your app store, search TRI-cities, download our mobile app. I'm going to send that out again and look for it on our Facebook page, and then I'm going to also upload it to the church YouTube channel. It's on my personal YouTube channel because that was the fastest I could get it up before service, because I really wanted people to watch it before the service. So make sure you watch that. We talked about a couple of things that I think are important for you to know, but also some challenges for us as a church, especially if you call Tri-Cities Church home, or if you're connected to us in any way. As a diverse church, we have not just an opportunity, but an obligation to do some real work in the area of racial reconciliation. But with that being said, if you have any questions about today's message, we're going in to record next week's message tonight. You can expect me to further unpack some of those thoughts in the video about what's going on. Probably going to have to change up the message just a little bit because a lot has happened since we recorded that actual service that you saw today. But if you have any questions about today's service, about the topic of having your buttons pushed because of willful ignorance, especially when we live in a day and age where information is easily accessible, it's often unrestricted. And I admitted this up front that that's probably my biggest pet peeve, and the thing that pushes my buttons the most is not just ignorance, not just when people don't know things, but when it's obvious that they have no desire to know things. I said this at the top of the message, that willful ignorance is avoiding information so that you can avoid being involved. And so while that message was preached prior to all of this stuff happening, I think in some way maybe God used that to be prophetic, in the sense that the next day after we recorded that message, we saw George Floyd needlessly and unjustly lose his life. And since then, there's just been a downward spiral of things going on in our country. So if you have particular questions about today's message, go ahead and shoot those to me. We'll stay on for about another 5 minutes or so, so that we can answer any questions that you have about today's message, about what to do when somebody is willfully ignorant and it pushes your buttons. So go ahead and shoot those questions to me. If you're on my personal page, again, go over to the Tri-Cities Church Facebook page, so that way I can see all the questions. If you put a question on my page, I may not see it until the broadcast is over. So go ahead and send any questions that you have, so that we can address and answer those questions. I'll wait just a few more minutes if you have any questions that you would like me to answer about today's message, week 3 of the elevator series. I'll wait just a few more minutes if you have any questions that you would like me to answer about today's message, week 3 of the elevator series. All right. I don't see many questions coming in, so either I did a really good job, or we're still all just processing, which is okay. All right, here's a question. What do I think is the best way to approach someone who is willfully ignorant? Okay. I think the best way to answer that question is, if you go back to the message that talked about first observing if it's a pattern of behavior. Sometimes people get caught up in their own implicit bias. And here's the thing about implicit bias is that I said this to someone several weeks ago. We all want to be right. And I think there's something noble about that, is that there's this intention to be right. What we often neglect is understanding the fact that we all live with a particular set of lenses on that informs how we view the world, how we view faith, how we view God. We always want to believe that we are, that all of our thoughts are unfiltered, that all of what we believe to be true comes in a vacuum, which is just simply not true. And so I think if you observe a pattern of behavior of someone who's being willfully ignorant, I think the best way to at least try to begin a conversation with them is to help them to understand that all of us, it doesn't matter who you are, what walk of life you're from, what your race is, your culture, your background, ethnicity, no matter how much money you have or don't have, every single one of us walks around with a particular set of lenses on that informs how we see the world. And most often, the reason why people are ignorant, and even to the extent of being willfully ignorant, is that we've yet to address that issue, is that there's another way of seeing the world that may not be particular to your experience, and to try to somehow help people to understand that you see the world one way because of your context. I think that's the best place. It's really hard if they're unwilling to see that, to address it beyond their willful ignorance. But we first got to acknowledge I see the world the way that I see it because of how I grew up, because of my background, because of all of my experiences, and that's something that we've all got to deal with. Most of y'all know this. I almost 6 years ago was diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and one of the questions that I had to ask myself was, what does the world experience when it experiences me? Because I learned that it wasn't exactly what I thought it was. Now that doesn't mean that I was right or wrong, but the reality was is that what I thought people experienced when they interacted with me was not what people were actually experiencing. And oftentimes that's the best place to start in trying to help people to unravel some of the things that cause willful ignorance. Here's another question. You talked about feeding your cynicism. How do you let go of it when people continue to be willfully ignorant? I think one of the reasons why I said to deal with their diet is because it's extremely difficult to help someone who continues to feed the things that actually make them biased. And so, if you notice, I said in the message that that there are actually algorithms for social media, and I actually got off. I'll be off for a while just because I even have to check my own filter. But there are algorithms that actually distribute information down your timeline that just strengthens your already implicit bias. And so it's very difficult to really help someone who doesn't realize that they're feeding their own cynicism, their own bias. Sometimes sharing with them alternate views and alternate opinions, alternate perspectives. One of the best ways, things that I encourage people to do all the time, especially when it comes to living in America, is to watch international news about America. And you get sometimes a better perspective of how the world sees us. The key is to try to limit that diet that continues to feed what's already inside of us, which is our innate need to want to be right about everything, and to think that our opinion and our perspective and our experience is the only one that matters. And so sometimes you need an outside source to sort of help unravel that. If they're not willing to do that, then even Jesus says, don't cast your pearls on swine. And so at some point you've got to understand that those things that you hold dear, that are valuable, that are sacred to you, sometimes you've got to learn how to walk away without continuing to cast those on to people who won't hold the same value for what you believe in. Here's another question. How do you balance between, as your message suggested, using wisdom and restraining from response versus some wanting your response and viewing your lack of response as if you have no opinion or don't care, especially with what is going on? I think even if, for me, I'm a processor, and so sometimes, if you know me by now, I'm not an extremely reactionary person, but I will tell people that I am deciding how I feel about something and what my position is. And so even personally, in moments where it seems like I don't speak on things, it's because I'm formulating the most articulate, the most wise response. And so I think the balance is to let people know that there's very little that we don't have a response for. That doesn't mean that it has to be a response in the immediate. And so if you're trying to balance it, I think you just let people know, I'm considering that, I'm thinking about it, I'm processing how I want to respond, and just leave it at that. And so they know that you're not negating the responsibility of responding to something, but perhaps just how you work and how your brain works, how your emotions work. You need time to process it. So you put it out there that you'll make a statement or you'll respond, and when you're able to collect your thoughts and share something that is of value to the situation. I always want to personally share something that's going to be of value, and so sometimes that just takes time to process, to get your words together. Sometimes you have to write it down. Sometimes you have to practice. Everything doesn't have to be reactionary, but some things do need a response. Let me see. Any other questions? I think I covered most of them. We went a little bit longer, but I think these are important. I probably will, maybe even sometime in the week, do another live. I think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. But I want to encourage you to go back and re-listen to the message, even though it was preached prior to everything that's been going on. I do think there's some providence in what God had me to share, because we are battling a lot of things that cannot be unraveled until we deal with that topic of being ignorant of history, of facts, of systems, of things that are actually very much a part of the fiber of our country. Last question, and then we'll log off. How do you handle the fact that people you consider friends don't offer a word of encouragement or support despite knowing you're in pain? Great question. I think it also, you can also apply some of the same wisdom from today's message, in that factor in time. How much time does that person possibly need to gather their thoughts, to gather what they feel will be helpful and of value to you? So factor in time. Maybe they need time to gather their thoughts. Maybe they're trying to figure out a way to say something encouraging, that truly is encouraging and not demeaning. And then also, I would say apply the same wisdom of timing. Is there a proper timing? Is it something that's going on with them? Is there a timing factor in them being able to send a word of encouragement? But then also, and probably most importantly, I would look at, is this a pattern of behavior? All the same things I said in the message this morning. If this is a pattern of behavior, and not just a lapse of judgment or a lack of being able to articulate their expression of encouragement to you, if this is an ongoing pattern of behavior and you've observed it, I'm the type of person who likes to get a large enough sample size of anything before I determine what I'm actually dealing with. And so if this is something that's been going on for a long time and you tend to see this as a pattern of behavior of not responding, then I think that probably a conversation needs to be had with that person about what your expectations are for them responding to pain that you're dealing with. But if it's not a pattern of behavior, I would give them some grace. Think about the time and the timing. Think about maybe their struggle with being able to say the right thing. I had someone who approached me in inbox not too long ago and said that they wanted to say something, they just didn't know what to say. And I found that to be incredibly encouraging, because I realize I speak for a living, everyone's not that way. They don't process the way I do. And so I try to factor in timing, and establish whether that's a pattern of behavior. If it is a pattern of behavior, then we need to have a deeper conversation about what my expectations are of you as someone who's in covenant with me. But I would give it some time and then address it when the timing is right. Okay, last one. How do you not let others' willful ignorance destroy your impression of them once you see their truth? That's tough, and I'm not sure that you can control that, honestly. If I'm going to speak honestly, once, as Maya Angelou has famously said, rest in peace to her, once a person shows you who they are, believe them. I may have mentioned this in another message in this series. No one gets upset when a cat meows, and no one is surprised when a dog barks. And so I think once we understand who people are, we just deal with them and adjust our expectations accordingly. And so there may be some erosion of your understanding of them, but more importantly, maybe your understanding of your relationship with them. In a previous message, I talked about the 3 levels that David talked about when he was being ignored. There were adversaries, there were acquaintances, and then there were those who were assigned to him. And sometimes when you discover who someone is, and maybe that's just how they are in that season of their life, you may have to recategorize them. And so they may have to move from someone that you thought was assigned to someone who's just an acquaintance. And that's okay. I think give yourself permission to do that. Give yourself permission to grieve what you thought that relationship was. but I'm not sure that you can stop yourself from viewing them differently. But as with anything else, be angry but sin not. And so make the adjustments. Maybe you need to recategorize them into a more appropriate lane in your life. I said this before. The only time you should be disappointed with people is if they were actually appointed. There are some people in my life who are great acquaintances, but I don't allow their behaviors or their lack of response to things to disappoint me, because I never gave them that position in my life, and I can still respect them, still love them, still be around them, but I just know what category they fall in, and our relationship proceeds from that place and that place only. All right, let me wrap this up. Again, if this has been helpful, just shoot me something in the comments. Maybe we'll jump back on again. Definitely we'll be back on next Sunday. Again, if you did not see the message that I posted, it was about 16 or 17 minute message. Make sure you go back and watch that, because it will frame in the entire service and explain why I did not specifically address what was going on, because that service that you watched today was recorded even before George Floyd was killed. And so you'll certainly hear more about what we're asking you to pray for, what we are recommitting ourselves to do as a church. And so I'm going to log off now. I see you got a lot of comments here. But I'm going to jump off, continue to comment. I'll jump on and continue to answer as the day goes on. Let's have a healthy, informed, intelligent, and spirit-led discussion about what's going on in our country as it relates to this message and what we should do about it. So thanks for jumping on. God bless you. We will see you next week. Bye.